Evening. Our top story tonight, Mike Evans is going to be traded by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this isn't official, but Mike Evans and his agent have given the Buccaneers a deadline of week 1, kickoff to the NFL season, September 9th, in order to sign a long-term deal. Otherwise, Mike Evans will stop negotiating and he will be looking to the future. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it kind of just makes sense to move on from Mike Evans. This is a team in transition. This is a rebuilding roster, and having Mike Evans, a 30-year-old wide receiver, isn't part of the long-term plan. And so we're going to get into that and much, much more on Player Profiler today. Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans is to be determined on what his future holds, but I'll tell you. So, Mike Evans and his agent, they have set a deadline of September 9th in order to sign a long-term deal that will make him a Tampa Bay Buccaneer for life. That is the goal from Mike Evans. That is the goal from his agent. But they haven't received a contract offer from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have been negotiating for about 2 years and still have not received an offer period, or at least that's what the team is alleging. And so this year, Mike Evans is set to be $23 million on the cap. He is making $15 million plus some incentives at the end of the season. And then his contract voids. And then he is going to take on some dead money for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the next couple of years unless they sign him. But as we can see right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are rebuilding. This is a bottom of the barrel roster. The defense is terrible. The offensive line is not good. They have good receivers, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Trey Palmer. But this is a team undergoing a youth movement. Rashad White entering his second year in the league. Cade Otton, the starting tight end, entering his second year in the league. Chris Godwin is still quite young, despite how long he's been in the NFL, entered the league at just age 20, so he's going to be around for a long time. Trey Palmer, set to be the wide receiver 2 next year. And so with Mike Evans, with an aging wide receiver, this just doesn't fit with the long-term plan. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and say, hey, this is the year we blow it up. And the Buccaneers have said this is the year that they blow it up. They had been kicking the salary cap can down the road year after year to make sure they maximized everything with Tom Brady. And had Tom Brady come back, they would have done the same. They would have pushed a bunch of that salary cap into the future. But Tom Brady leaves and the Bucs say, hey, this is the time to completely rebuild, to completely become a new team with Caleb Williams, with Drake May under center, more than likely after they are the worst or second worst team in the NFL, looking at you, Arizona Cardinals. And so how does an aging Mike Williams help? Because especially the position Mike Evans plays, he is an outside clasher of an X receiver. He stretches the field, though he doesn't stretch the field in the same way that he once did with speed. He still is able to moss people down the field, so he still has that ability. But how much longer is that ability going to hold up? We've seen 1,000 yards from Mike Evans year after year after year, every season of his career. But how long is that going to hold up? We see it all the time. Julio Jones, Andre Johnson, these big outside X receivers, it hits them fast. Chris Godwin, a slot receiver who gets open over the middle, who gets open through athleticism and agility, that lasts longer. The craftiness in the route running lasts longer than just being Mike Evans and just being larger than everyone on the outside. And so Mike Evans doesn't fit into the long-term plans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that means the Buccaneers should trade him. Because if not, he's going to walk in free agency next year. They're going to get, at most, a third-round compensatory pick, and that's if they don't sign other free agents, and I have to expect the Buccaneers will be adding a bunch of free agents next year due to the fact that they have so much money after kind of pushing all of the salary cap forward this year. they're going to have a lot of money next year and they're going to want to spend that. And so they would cost themselves even a possible third round pick for Mike Evans. And so I'm not saying it's going to happen before the season. I'm not saying it's going to happen at any point soon, but Mike Evans will not end the year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Would not surprise me in the slightest if he goes to the New York Jets, a team that needs an outside X receiver. That's not Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard, despite how large he is more of a slot flanker. He plays a lot in the slot. He gets open as a flanker. He's not a dominant one-on-one press coverage wide receiver. He's not beating that. And not to say that Corey Davis was dominant against press coverage, but he was good enough. That was the role he was going to play. It was going to be Corey Davis on the outside. It was going to be Allen Lazard and Garrett Wilson playing off of each other in the slot and as a flanker. Corey Davis retires. Allen Lazard is now forced to be that X receiver unless they want Garrett Wilson on the line of scrimmage, which, hey, he can play whatever position you want him to play. But going from Corey Davis and Allen Lazard and Garrett Wilson to Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, and Randall Cobb / McCole Hardman, that's a downgrade. That is objectively a downgrade. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may send, not Corey Davis, they may send Mike Evans to the New York Jets as they go all in on this 2-year window with Aaron Rodgers. Or they could send him to the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are in need of an X receiver. They are in need of someone to stretch the field, open things up underneath for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And like I said, Mike Evans isn't stretching the field just through pure speed anymore, but he can still get it done on the outside, especially if he is not the wide receiver one. If Amon-Ra St. Brown's the one and Mike Evans is the two who has to face the outside coverage and the cornerback one anyways, that's a great situation. Same thing he has going for him in Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin is the true wide receiver one, and Mike Evans is facing the wide receiver one coverage because he plays outside. So I don't know where Mike Evans is going to end up, but I do know that Mike Evans will not be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer by the end of the season. I'm expecting the New York Jets and the Detroit Lions to be in on this. But what about you? What do you think is going to happen? Let us know in the comments. But in the meantime, we've got a word from the Podfather.
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sportsbooks? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sportsbooks on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until Bet Openly came along. Bet Openly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code Underworld, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on Bet Openly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be. And now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is Underworld. Check it out. Now, as we at PlayerProfiler have become a full-blown machine learning company, the crowning achievement has to be the injury finder. We're now taking BMI data and injury history data and assigning a probability that a player is injured on any given touch. And not only can you see a player's fragility rating, their injury risk, we also have analysis from professional physical therapists breaking down all the major players that underwent surgery last year and what their rehabilitation looks like heading into 2023. There's a tool to compare players. There's a database where you can say, show me all the foot injuries, show me all the severe injuries, show me all the injuries requiring surgery. It provides you the key market intelligence to know what is the difference in probability that player X versus player Y will miss games this year. It's great for fantasy football, and it also just satisfies your curiosity as a fan. Go to the App Store, go to Google Play, download it. It's $5 every year just to reload the latest injury predictions and fragility ratings. The 2023 data is live now. Open your phone and get smarter.
We love the injury finder, and unfortunately, we're going to have to use it plenty this season. We've already got injuries piling in, especially to rookies. We've got Devon Achane, who is questionable with a shoulder injury entering the season. We don't know if he's going to play week 1. We do know that Jeff Wilson will not play week 1. He is out at least 4 games on injured reserve. He's dealing with a midsection and a finger injury, so they found that he couldn't protect himself or the football. And Mike McDaniel wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Wilson plays this season. That sounds ominous. That sounds terrifying, but doesn't actually tell us anything. Kind of just tells us that Mike McDaniel went to the Pete Carroll school of injuries, just complete vagueness. Everything either sounds terrifying or very optimistic, and best of luck figuring out what it is. But no Jeff Wilson. So if Devon Achane is healthy, if he does play, he could be in for a big workload. Obviously, Raheem Mostert is going to handle most of the work. He's going to be the RB1, but Savon Ahmed is not healthy. He's the RB4 for the Miami Dolphins. That would leave undrafted free agent Chris Brooks, who is the RB5, who hasn't played an NFL snap, much like Devon Achane, or they could call up Darrington Evans from the practice squad. But if Devon Achane can play, he could be looking at a big workload in week 1. And if he's not able to play, Raheem Mostert is going to just be fed by the Buffalo, or not by the Buffalo Bills, against the Buffalo Bills. I believe that's who they're playing week 1. Now I forget. But looking at some other rookies, we've got Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's dealing with a wrist injury. He is at practice wearing a non-contact jersey. He's got a cast on his hand as well. But the fact he is out there playing, the fact he is out there practicing, that is a good sign for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Sounds like at most Jackson Smith-Njigba, JSN, will miss 1 game, and he might not even miss 1 game. So I hope you bought the dip on JSN. And you might be able to buy the dip on Kendre Miller as well. Kendre Miller has been up and down all offseason. Obviously, he didn't participate in the combine. He didn't run at all due to a knee injury that he recovered from. Then he gets drafted in the 3rd round by the New Orleans Saints, which is great. Then Alvin Kamara gets a shorter suspension than we expect. So he's gone the way back down. Then it turns out that he ends up getting another knee injury, but the knee injury isn't that bad, so the stock's back up. Kendre Miller didn't look like he was going to miss any time with the knee injury that he was out indefinitely for. And now he is dealing with a hamstring, might miss week 1, which would mean Jamal Williams is set for a massive workload against the Tennessee Titans. And let's be honest, the Tennessee Titans are coasting off of their reputation under Mike Vrabel because they've downgraded across the board on defense. Don't get me wrong, Jeffrey Simmons is still elite, but they've lost both their starting linebackers, multiple starting linebackers, and wasn't just 2. Lost some defensive linemen, took big hits in the secondary as well. The Titans defense is coasting off of reputation. Don't be surprised if the Saints are able to move the ball better than expected against the Tennessee Titans. And don't be surprised if the Titans are actually a lot worse than they're being made out to be. Defense is pure reputation at this point. And obviously we've seen Mike Vrabel achieve greater than the sum of its parts on defense year after year, but it gets tough at some point. It really does. Rounding out our rookie updates, we do have word on Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is a captain for the Indianapolis Colts. We don't know how they actually pick their captains, and we also know there's like 8 captains for the Colts. A lot of captains. Pretty much everyone is a captain in Indianapolis, but Anthony Richardson is one of them. That doesn't actually mean anything, though, let's be honest. The starting quarterback is going to be named a captain. That just almost always happens. Mitchell Trubisky was named a captain by the Steelers last year. It just is part of being a quarterback in the NFL, but still nice to see. Still nice to see that Anthony Richardson, captain of the Indianapolis Colts. Not so nice to see, if you're a fan of Quentin Johnston, that he is expected to start out the year as the wide receiver for that Josh Palmer. As the Podfather has been saying week after week, month after month, Josh Palmer is going to start the year in 3 wide receiver sets alongside Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Quentin Johnston is going to be the first man off the bench. He'll rotate in. He'll get some manufactured touches due to his ability as a run after catch specialist, but it's an uphill battle for Quentin Johnston to produce in fantasy. And we've been telling you for the longest time, but no one wanted to hear it. No one wanted to believe it. Now here we are, Josh Palmer over Quentin Johnston, at least for week 1. And speaking of week 1, it looks like Joe Burrow is going to be back. Never in doubt We never thought that Joe Burrow was going to miss week 1. We outlined a very unlikely scenario where he did miss week 1, and that just didn't come to fruition. And we expected it even after Jamar Chase said, hey, I'm fine if he misses 4 games. It doesn't happen. Joe Burrow is back at practice. Joey B, Joe Burr, Joe Shiesty, the man is back. And the Bengals should be the favorite in the AFC to make the Super Bowl. This is just a loaded roster. I'll take the Bengals over the Bills, over the Chiefs, but I was doing that last year. So obviously I have a little bit of bias, but Bengals are just so good this year. So good. The window is going to be open for the Cincinnati Bengals as long as Joe Burrow is there. And we'll probably get a contract extension from him any day now before the season kicks off. Less good news on the injury front is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp suffered a setback with his hamstring injury. This is not something we typically expect, according to our friend Jeff Mueller, our DPT, who helps us out in the Injury Finder app. He lists a 20% re-injury rate for wide receivers with a hamstring injury, and unfortunately, worst case scenario for Cooper Kupp, aggravates the injury, and now we'll see when he returns. The Rams sound as though they're going to be cautious with Cooper Kupp returning. You can't draft him in the first round now. He's a second-round pick, a value in the second round probably because of the talent, but Cooper Kupp is going to miss week 1, probably going to miss week 2, maybe he returns week 3, and then hopefully it's smooth sailing for there. But this one hurts, especially as a guy who has Cooper Kupp in a keeper league. This one is just a stab to the heart. Hopefully Cooper Kupp gets well soon, but for now, he's fallen out of the first round, I think, in fantasy football. You hate to see it. It's going to be interesting to see this offense without Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson is expected to be the wide receiver 1. He's the one wide receiver whose name Matthew Stafford actually knows. Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua are going to be the wide receiver 2 and 3. And Ben Skoranek, who was a part-time starter last year, he's expected to be more of a wide receiver 4-5 alongside Demarcus Robinson and spend more time on special teams than the actual offense, which is good news for Puka Nacua and all of those who truther him in Dynasty, all of those who are drafting Puka Nacua. I'm not saying it's going to translate to fantasy success early. It's probably not going to, but the fact that he could be starting in 3 wide receiver sets right away, that is pretty big news. So congrats to Puka Nacua. Sorry to Cooper Kupp. There's a couple other injuries across the NFL. Romeo Doubs has missed practice this week with a hamstring injury. That puts him at risk to miss week 1. And we always said that at some point, Jayden Reed was going to pass Romeo Doubs on the depth chart. He was going to become the wide receiver 2 for the Green Bay Packers. This may be the opening, because if Romeo Doubs can't play, then Jayden Reed is instantly the wide receiver 2 for the Green Bay Packers. And if he can play, maybe they just conserve him a little bit. Maybe in 2 wide sets, they have Jayden Reed on the field instead of Romeo Doubs, because Jayden Reed is better than Romeo Doubs to begin with. And that was always going to become apparent once the games actually started. And we did see that in the preseason. Jordan Love targeted Romeo Doubs less than Christian Watson, less than Jayden Reed, less than Luke Musgrave. And so this looks like the opening for Jayden Reed to officially become the wide receiver 2 for the Green Bay Packers. Keep an eye out for that. Traquan Smith is going to be out for the New Orleans Saints in week 1. Not a big deal. He's the wide receiver 4-5, but just something to keep in mind. We've heard Traquan Smith listed as a trade target, potentially for the Denver Broncos. Looks like that will not be the case. We also won't see Kyle Phillips, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. He's going to be out at least the first 4 games of the season with a hamstring injury. Hate to see it. I absolutely love Kyle Phillips, but I also love Treylon Burks, and Treylon Burks is back to practice. He has returned from his LCL injury. Looks like he has a good chance to play week 1. And like we've said in the past, Treylon Burks, just because DeAndre Hopkins is there, doesn't mean he is completely ruined. Lowers his ceiling, don't get me wrong, but Treylon Burks in a Tennessee Titans offense who, like we mentioned earlier, not the best defense. They're going to have to be passing more. They're going to have to be putting up more points on the board in order to be competitive. And we know Mike Vrabel wants to be competitive. And so we could be looking at a AJ Brown, Corey Davis type split from the Tennessee Titans, where DeAndre Hopkins is a lesser version of AJ Brown. But why can't Treylon Burks be a greater version of Corey Davis that season? Anything's possible. So Treylon Burks, he is back at practice. This is great news. Hopefully, we will see him week 1. I fully expect to. We're also hopeful to see Zach Moss in week 1. He is not practicing for the Colts right now, but he also doesn't have a cast, doesn't have a brace on that broken arm. So Zach Moss looks like he is on his way to returning. I don't know if it moves the needle, but it definitely makes things messier for the Colts backfield. Zach Moss was RB1 last year. He shouldn't have been. Deion Jackson should have been playing over Zach Moss, but Jeff Saturday is a dinosaur and just wanted Zach Moss to run into a brick wall over and over again, and he did that just fine. So, but anyways, Deion Jackson, Zach Moss, we'll see who ends up playing more snaps out of the veterans there, and we can also see Evan Hull get some snaps as well. He was repping behind Deion Jackson in the preseason, but there's still an opening. Just a mess. Don't play anyone in the Colts backfield week 1, except for Anthony Richardson. He's going to be one scoring the touchdowns if there are any. Other news around the NFL, we did see Jalen Reagor cut by the Minnesota Vikings. He is signed with the New England Patriots. They are taking a shot on Jalen Reagor. The Patriots also taking a shot on Matt Corral. They claim Matt Corral off of waivers. Bailey Zappi now on the practice squad. Matt Corral, technically QB2, though I have to imagine if anything happened to Mac Jones, they would put Bailey Zappi, elevate him from the practice squad, put him as QB2 just because Corral doesn't know the offense. But this one's especially interesting when you remember that in order to get Matt Corral, in order to draft him, the Panthers traded up with the New England Patriots just last year. Patriots trade back, Panthers select Corral, and the Patriots end up with Matt Corral anyways. Oh, how the turntables, the twists of fate. Poor Matt Corral, though, he just never really had an opportunity with the Carolina Panthers. Got hurt early last year, didn't look particularly well this year, but he was never going to have a chance anyways. They signed Andy Dalton to be the backup behind Bryce Young and just made changes that he was never going to be a part of. So he gets a fresh start with the New England Patriots. We also see TJ Hawkinson get an extended stay with the Minnesota Vikings. He reaches a 4-year, $66 million extension to become the highest paid tight end in the NFL, over $17 million per year, which beats Darren Waller, which beats George Kittle. And now Travis Kelce is no longer a top 3 tight end paid in the NFL. He's number 4. Travis Kelce is making less than TJ Hawkinson, less than Darren Waller, less than George Kittle, and barely more than Mark Andrews and Dallas Goedert. Travis Kelce needs a pay raise, but he's also happy to continue to win Super Bowls and happy with the money he is making off of the field. So we'll see if he actually pushes for that. I could see the Chiefs doing a little something just to reward him, but it's kind of awkward with the Chiefs right now because they have Chris Jones, who is actively holding out an attempt to get a new deal. But back to TJ Hawkinson, he will be with the Minnesota Vikings for the next 4 years. Actually, longer than that. He will be there through 2027. He gets $29 million guaranteed out of the 66. So that's a little less than half of the contract is guaranteed for TJ Hawkinson. But congrats. Congrats to TJ Hawkinson. Happy he got paid. And when you compare it to past tight end contracts, it's actually not as bad as it seems. Because when Kelce and Kittle signed their extensions, it was taking up a higher percentage of the salary cap. The salary cap has gone up like crazy over the past couple of years. And it's for TJ Hawkinson to be making, don't get me wrong, $3 million a year more than Travis Kelce's making is too much for TJ Hawkinson. But when you compare it to the time they signed it, it actually isn't that bad. This is just an appropriately rated contract for TJ Hawkinson. Now go and sign Justin Jefferson because he absolutely needs that contract extension. He deserves to be paid. Moving on to the final contract extension that we saw over the past 2 days, Alec Ingold, the fullback for the Miami Dolphins, one of the few teams in the NFL that actually use a fullback. Ingold signs a 3-year, $17.2 million extension. He is now the highest paid fullback in the NFL, passing Patrick Ricard, the Baltimore Ravens, fullback slash former defensive tackle slash potential offensive lineman. He was taking a lot of practice reps with the offensive line during the offseason after he came off the PUP. But love fullbacks. Love to see fullbacks still have a home in the NFL. Always with these Kyle Shanahan type offenses. 49ers have Juszczyk. Dolphins have Alec Ingold. Final piece of news for the night. Remember, we are less than 1 week from NFL kickoff. Less than 1 week from the Detroit Lions versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And in that, Jared Goff admits today something I didn't realize. Jared Goff has never played against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. We all remember the barn burner between the Rams and the Chiefs, but that was actually in Mexico City. That was not in Kansas City. That was not even in Los Angeles. So Jared Goff in his first trip to Arrowhead, Chiefs versus the Detroit Lions. Expect another shootout. Football is back. Let's